Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Dugout Daily. I'm Charlie, and I'm again joined by Dan. It's been a long time since Dan's been on, and we are reviewing the match where Manchester City edged out Newcastle United 2-1 in a tense Premier League encounter at the Etihad Stadium on Saturday, with young midfielder Nico O'Reilly scoring twice to secure a vital victory that moved Pep Guardiola's side to within 2 points of league leaders Arsenal. However, the gap is now back to 5, with City having a game in hand. How are you, Dan, mate?
I'm very good, thank you, Chips.
Good to hear. Good to hear. It was a very tense second half, but we got the job done. That's all that matters. We'll get to that. But the 52,187 in attendance witnessed an entertaining opening half as Nico O'Reilly fired City ahead in the 14th minute with a powerful strike assisted by Omar Marmoush, only for Newcastle to level 8 minutes later through Lewis Hall's deflected strike from Jacob Ramsey's pass, as O'Reilly restored the Hulls lead in the 27th minute with a well-directed header from an Erling Haaland assist in the decisive moment in a hard-fought 3 points. What was your thoughts on the few goals, Dan?
Yeah, well, I mean, unexpected scorer, I suppose. You don't expect O'Reilly to come forward, but it just shows the improvement in his game over the last couple of weeks and his move into midfield. The goals were pretty good. It's a shame that they got one, but it's impressive. I mean, the thing that impressed me wasn't exactly the goals about that performance. I think it was the other end for us. Really good when you've got players from the academy coming through, scoring goals, winning your games in crucial title-decided matches.
Definitely. Before we speak about this game more in general, we'll look at Arsenal as they slipped up in the week before we played Newcastle, of course, as it created an opportunity for us as the Gunners squandered a 2-goal lead in a midweek draw against struggling Wolverhampton Wanderers. That is a terrible result for them, isn't
it? No, I think that was it just sums up Arsenal the second that any slight bit of pressure comes onto them. Said this for a while. If there's one team that can bottle a 9-point lead, it's them, and they are doing that very well. They may have a few wins. They will have a few wins coming up, but I think that has seriously dented their title bid, especially with us, right behind them. I think. I think with players like Bernardo Silva, Guardiola, Haaland, Diaz, even if you look at Stones, Ake, etc., Foden on the bench, they are a team that have won several leagues, from this position. And I think this position is a brilliant position for us to be in. I think, being right behind them with a game in hand, that game in hand is always going to loom over them no matter how many points forward they get in front of us. So, I think really positive for us. And great signs that they are cracking.
Yeah, and of course they faced another relegation threatened side at the weekend as well, as they beat Spurs 4-1, which was a banana skin really on paper, but Spurs were just Spurs. Not much out the ordinary, really, was it?
No, Spurs. I mean, it'd been lovely if they did look at one point like they could get a job or get a point. Look, Spurs are just terrible, aren't they? You can't really. Yeah. You can't look at that result and think, "Oh my God, they're back." I think it's just a weird thing that we have at that stadium against them. That obviously they have a different style. I don't know what it is, but it was disappointing for them to not get anything. But I still believe that Arsenal are well and truly capable of dropping points to absolutely anybody here. I've seen even Wolves, who are practically already relegated. I think it'd be really interesting to see how Arsenal go up against several teams now. In this running, they've got a few away games coming up. I think Spurs result isn't too much of a worry for us. They're always going to win games. They're not. It's not a relegation fight.
Yeah, definitely. Looking back at the City game, then Newcastle, of course, had a 5,000-mile round trip to Baku in the week before they played us at the weekend, where they dismantled Karabakh 6-1. It was out, not expected that result, was it? But Karabakh were absolutely terrible on the night, weren't they, Dan?
Yeah, look, they are pretty much the level of a League Two football team over here. They are.
Yeah.
They aren't great, but I think the amount of miles that teams are travelling to play them should definitely play a part. Their home advantage is very significant.
Yeah.
The teams have to sit on a flight for 8 hours. It's not exactly a great build up for them, but I think Premier League quality just shone. And they had the job done fairly quickly. And I mean, for us, that journey probably should have been a bit more. We should have used it. And we gave the players a rest, which I suppose again they probably had the same amount of days in training as Newcastle did. So yeah, look, it's not a big deal at all.
No, and of course they played the second leg tonight when we're recording this. It'll be last night when you're watching this, and they won 3-2 in what was a dead rubber, really. They played a lot stronger team than I expected. 9-3 on aggregate, and like I said, it was a lot stronger team than anyone expected, really, weren't it? Tonali, Joe Linton, Harvey Barnes, Botman, Byrne, all playing. It was unexpected, really, from Eddie Howe, weren't it?
Yeah, I suppose it is, but I suppose if he could have got a massive result, which he didn't, if he could have got a real batter into him, with his job being on the line, may raise the spirits in the Newcastle camp. They didn't. It's an interesting thing for Newcastle because their season is now effectively over. I think they're not going to get Champions League again. They're not going to do anything in they're out of both or not out of both cups. It's going to be a tough run in both cups for them, and on their current form, the Champions League is a couple of games here and there that they can really get up for. They can use the home atmosphere, and that'll probably be their moneymaker looking at the summer.
Yeah.
So that's sort of what they're going to have to go, and that's probably why they're going so strong. They may sacrifice a couple of league or cup games, resting players for the Champions League and hoping for a decent enough run.
Yeah, well, in the last 16, they'll play either Barcelona or Chelsea. One's a lot easier than the other if they draw Chelsea. I could see them getting through that. Barcelona, I think, would be an absolute battering, to be honest, especially going to the Nou Camp in the second leg. Looking back at this game then, City held on nervously in the closing stages as we required a crucial late save from Donnarumma to deny Harvey Barnes before celebrating the win. That's why we brought Donnarumma in, isn't it, Dan?
Yeah, and it just highlights how good he is. Especially if we are to go on and win things this season, which I think we are, he is more than he's a massive part of that. He's almost as big, or if not bigger, than the likes of Haaland in this running. Because I mean, it's proven if he's in net, you probably will win things. He's very good at tournament football as well. He's penalty shootouts. He's done it all. But they're just those crucial saves. He brings. He had it at Anfield. He's had it on Saturday. He won us. There's so many different aspects that he brings to it. Yes, his distribution isn't as good as Ederson, but he can win you games single-handedly, and he has done. He has kept us in several games. He's stopped several games being a battering.
Yeah.
He is. He will go down probably as one of the best signings of the summer, if not the best signing of the summer. It might not be looked at like that way in the media because he's a keeper, but he has been absolutely massive. And I think if we did still have somebody else in there, I'd say Ederson, whose shot stopping wasn't the best, we'd probably be in a very different situation right now. We'd probably be fighting for top four or Europe in general. Because our defence this year, especially that first half of the year, has been very shaky. He's been the one holding it together, and he's been a massive addition for us.
Yeah, definitely. City extended our unbeaten home run against Newcastle in the Premier League to 22 games, with the last win for Newcastle at the Etihad. Sorry, not at the Etihad, at Main Road in August 2002. And our winning streak against them is now 16 at the Etihad, which is the second longest in English top flight history for one team against another. They're truly remarkable numbers, really. I know Newcastle were crap for a number of years throughout that time, but I don't know how long it's been since the takeover. It's at least 3 or 4 years, and you'd think maybe they could nick a result here or there, wouldn't you, Dan?
Yeah, definitely. I think I've actually been quite surprised at how slow the progress has been in there and since their rebuild. Well, obviously not just our fixtures against them, which we seem to do very well, but I think we all expected a bit more. I think it was October 2021 when they were taken over, if I'm right. We all thought there'd be a lot more big names. There'd be a lot more bigger system through the door. All the higher ups would be there. And, I really thought that they'd be a top club competing at the top now with the likes of Chelsea, Arsenal, into the big six. I just look at their transfer business, especially the last year, and I just think, it's just not what was expected, considering that they are the richest club in the world, to say that you've got a midfield of, no offence to them, they're very good players, but Jacob Ramsey, is Dan Burn still that standard?
Yeah.
Is Nick Pope that standard? Is Eddie Howe that standard? It is Eddie Howe. He won the League Cup, and that's brilliant, but if you're really going to take the next step forward, you're going to need a lot more in, and I think Eddie Howe this summer has cost a lot. You've got Voltemada came in, did all right, but he's already wanting to leave. So, yeah, it's a really interesting situation. Obviously, it's not going to be like a FIFA career, which we all enjoyed when they first got took over. But it's just really surprising. I just thought that they'd really have a plan, a bit similar to City. I thought it'd be similar to City. They'd come in with a clear plan. They'd get an intense signing to come in, a big name coach, and they'd build a massive project around them. Do what City have done with Pep, get a big name in, and just say, look, you can have whatever you want, players, facilities, etc., staff, and just go on and really, push into the title race and Champions League, etc. But
definitely,
it's just been a very slow burner.
Yeah, definitely. Some people say they might have got Champions League too soon. Of course, I think it was the first season or second season under the new ownership that they actually got it. I'm not sure about that, to be honest. Champions League, it's always a bonus. We'll look back at City then, and next up, it's another tough test on paper, really, isn't it? Ellen Road leads away on Saturday night under the lights. It's not going to be an easy one, is it?
No. Look, I'd much prefer this one to be a 12:30 because there's definitely a thing with going to Elland Road in the dark. I think I was reading a stat before. It said that they haven't lost in 2 years under the lights, which is really interesting. It's really not good reading. I think the atmosphere will be absolutely bouncing at Elland Road as it always is. But you look at I just think it's going to be a really tough game. If we are to get the win, hopefully we are. But I think this is the game that I look at in this running, really, where I think this is one of the only games that really troubles me, and it's weird because they are in the relegation zone or in the relegation battle. But I do really think that this is going to cause us problems. I think we can't slack at any point, and we're going to have to put the game to bed early if we're going to get anything. You're going to need an early goal. You're going to need another goal on top of that. We've seen it when Leeds have played Liverpool, etc. Under the lights in this sort of fixture, they are really dangerous at coming back, and they're never out of the game. And the crowd will definitely play a part for him. So we're going to have to really keep our wits about us, and we're going to have to be switched on to get any sort of result. I think my prediction now, a few days earlier, would probably be a draw. I think, to be fair, I'd probably take that right now.
Yeah, I think we do need to win, to be honest. And even the Leeds game at home, we needed a winner in added time to win that game after being 2-0 up. We were in a bit of a rut at that time now. Next up then, we will look deeper at this game at Pep Guardiola's rebuild of the squad. Do City have the mentality within the squad to win the league? And look at probably the man of the match of this game and his chances at going to the World Cup with England, Nico O'Reilly. So Manchester City's celebrations at the final whistle showed a mix of relief and joy after a stressful second half at the Etihad Stadium, where we secured a vital 3 points. Would you say maybe that's the most important 3 points of the season so far, Dan?
No. I think that the most important 3 points of this season has already proven it. Has been Anfield, going to Anfield and getting 3 points. That'll be the biggest 3 points. It is a massive 3 points because it keeps us very, very close to Arsenal. Kept us in very close. But look, every 3 points now is massive. I think that one definitely. The players definitely felt that one. It was a lot closer than I probably thought it would be, but a massive result for us, and the players obviously showed that at the final whistle. Yeah,
definitely. Pep Guardiola has significantly rebuilt this squad since probably last January, where he brought in Nico Gonzalez, Abdulkadir Kushinov, Omar Marmoush. In the summer, he brought in Savinho. The less said about him, the better. But, of course, Semenyo Guehi all this season as well. Do you think this squad have the mentality to win another league title?
Absolutely. That's a very silly question to be even floated, and I've seen it in the media. I've seen plenty of people questioning mentality. First of all, if we're worried about mentality, why aren't people asking Arsenal about their mentality? Their players have won diddly squat for 20 years. We're on about a team that we've got the likes of Haaland, who's done nothing but win. Pep, we've got one of the most, if not, he's won everything. Bernardo Silva. Look at the leadership group of our team and look at the leadership group of the Arsenal team. You compare even Phil Foden's trophy cabinet to Declan Rice's.
Yeah, wow.
Tells you talk about mentality. Come on. Let's not be silly about mentality. If there's one team that is set, and if there's one set of players that I want at the minute, it's City. Yes, we've got a few new faces in, they might not have won much. We've got, but even though like Guehi come in, he won something last year. I'm pretty sure Nico Gonzalez probably won things in Portugal. He's come through at Barcelona. Obviously, mentality at Barcelona, you win things. And the man in charge of it all, the most important person in this rebuild is Pep, and Pep has installed this winning mentality into players like Foden, like Rodri, like Bernardo Silva, Haaland, Diaz. These serial winners didn't just become serial winners, straight away. They stayed under Pep for a few years, and that's where it comes. If these players, can stay with Pep, it'll come. And he knows exactly how to turn players into these mentality monsters, or whatever you want to call them. He turns players into serial winners. So I think mentality isn't a question at all.
Yeah, and of course, if you look at players like Bernardo Silva, John Stones, even Phil Foden, who were all part of the Centurions team, if you're part of the Centurions team and they're still at the club, you've won 6 league titles. That tells you everything you need to know. And the only Premier League winner at Arsenal is Gabriel Jesus, who, of course, was our backup striker. So that tells you everything you need to know. Looking at one of the newer players within the squad then, academy graduate Nico O'Reilly. He excelled in a role behind the strikers as he scored both goals and influenced play across the pitch and showcased skills beyond his left-back position, which has drawn England coach Thomas Tuchel's interest for the World Cup in the summer. It's an absolute disaster if he is not on the plane, isn't it, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, to say he's probably the form fullback. I know he's obviously not. He's been in midfield the last few games and hasn't looked out of place at all. But yeah, even if he plays in midfield or fullback, he's capable of both. I think he is probably one of the first picks in both. He's definitely my first choice left back.
Yeah,
you look at the other left back options that Tuchel has. Luke Shaw finished. He was finished ages ago. Who else is there?
Lewis Hall's probably the
Lewis Hall, yeah, maybe, but I'm going to be honest. Nico O'Reilly's a lot better than Lewis Hall. Apart from that, I can't.
Not much really.
There's no, and let's not be silly. I think O'Reilly, especially if Tuchel wants to play like a back three, and the back four, a bit like City do, where he can move into that midfield, he can do that. But yeah, I think at the minute, if the World Cup squad was released tomorrow, I think it wouldn't be silly to say O'Reilly should be probably one of the first names on the play.
Yeah, definitely. So looking at Newcastle then, Eddie Howe will have reason to be pleased with their performance, in my opinion, especially in the second half. It's probably one of the biggest challenges we've had in the league at the Etihad this season, to be honest. Dan Burn, of course, had a first half header disallowed for offside. I'm not sure what Donnarumma was doing for that one, but he made up for it at the end. And Anthony Gordon's pace caused City problems throughout the match. And of course, Kuchinov came on to nullify that pace at half-time. Pep later confirming that it was a tactical decision, taking Diaz off for Kuchinov, and he was probably Newcastle's main attacking threat. What was your thoughts on Newcastle's performance, Dan?
Yeah, it was impressive, to be fair. Obviously, I thought after that League Cup semi-final that it'd be a fairly easy game, I think. And it was going to be similar to last year, where it was bigged up to be a big tough game, and we end up winning by 3 or 4 goals.
Yeah,
that wasn't the case. They came out fighting. They had a plan. They stuck to it, and fair play to them. They caused us problems. I think it definitely probably helps Eddie Howe, the fact that we're basically playing them every 5 minutes at this point.
Yeah.
So tactically, teams will be a lot more familiar than they were a few weeks ago. But yeah, I think it was key for us, and they are always going to try and play on the break. They've got 2 very quick players there, Elanga, Gordon, Barnes. They're all quite quick players.
Yeah.
Especially without Kusanov, which is a very silly decision in my mind. Not to start him against a quick attack. I mean, Diaz is brilliant, but the one thing he cannot do is run.
Yeah.
We play Kusanov, it's absolutely perfect for us. Similar to like Walker did, in previous years. Any team with pace that was nullified fairly quickly. I think their performance was brilliant. It really showed fight, considering that they'd come off a 5,000-mile trip to Azerbaijan a few days earlier.
Definitely
against a fully rested City. It's really impressive to see him come out and compete for 90 minutes, and at times it looked like they probably should be level with us.
Yeah. Next up then, it is time for the player ratings. Same as always with the player ratings, of course, starting in net, working to attack, include the subs as well. Of course, we'll start in goal with Gianluigi Donnarumma. We've mentioned his important save at the end, but of course, he was lucky Dan Burns' goal was disallowed because I thought he was at fault for that one. I'll give him a 7.5. What about yourself, Dan?
Yeah, I'd probably agree. 7.5 that's probably about right.
Yeah. Moving over to right back then, Mateus Nunes. He played the full 90, of course. Didn't really have much to do, but it was a solid Nunes performance, in my opinion. I'm going to give him a 7. What about yourself, Dan?
Yeah, I'll give him a 7. I'll give him a 7.5, I reckon. Yeah, he was good.
And then the two centre-backs, starting with Ruben Diaz, his 250th City appearance, and of course got subbed off at half-time. He got booked in the first half as well. I'll probably give him a 6.5. It's not really his fault that he got picked. It's not a surprise that he got picked, but of course, all Newcastle have through Elanga, I know Visser didn't play, but Visser, Gordon, even Barnes, like you said before, all they have is pace in attack. What was your thoughts on his performance, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, he was hooked at half time, wasn't he? Nothing was really his fault, but I don't think you can give him higher than a 6, really.
Yeah. And his centre-back partner, Mark Guehi, solid again, in my opinion. I'm going to give him a 7. What about yourself, Dan?
Yeah, I'd give him a 7.5. I think he was really good throughout the night. It was pretty crucial to us. Yeah, he's looked really good so far since coming in. Looks like an absolute masterstroke getting him for 20 million now.
Yeah, definitely. And at left back was Ryan Aït-Nouri. I don't think he was great, to be honest. He didn't really have much to do. Like I said previously with Diaz, I'm going to give him a 6.5 as well. What about yourself, Dan?
Yeah, I completely agree and go 6.5. You know, he's defensively, again, is he up to standard again? And, look, I've been one of his biggest critics, but I think he was a pretty flat night for him.
Yeah. Moving to probably my man of the match of the night, the Rodri of old I saw on Saturday night. In the first half, he completed the joint most dribbles, with 2, completed the most passes with 48, made the most tackles joint with 4, and won the most duels with 7. That was all in the first half, and he won the most duels in the match with 12, and the joint most tackles with 5. I'm going to give him a 9 out of 10. I thought he was absolutely superb. What about yourself, Dan?
Yeah, I'll give him an 8 out of 10. He's looking a lot more like the old Rodri. I think, people that, have been slaying him recently. I've just got to realise that, the Rodri that we had 2 years ago is going to be a different player now. And it takes time for an ACL injury, not a year. It doesn't come back like a hamstring injury, when you're expected, and that's what people have expected. He's going to come back this year and be the same player. Look, it's going to be a 2-year process, which we're almost at the end of, and signs are really coming back. Even at 70%, he's already looking very, very good. He's recovering, and he will be back to his best very soon.
Yeah. And then on the right-hand side, in my opinion, probably his worst performance in a City shirt so far, especially in the second half. He was very sloppy. Antoine Semenyo, I'm going to give him a 6. What about yourself, Dan?
Yeah, I'd probably give him a 6.5. I didn't think he was too bad. He didn't do much. But then again, I think with Semenyo, he's going to be if he doesn't score or assist, he doesn't really bring too much. But we know this. And you just got to swallow these bad games. They're expected. And move on.
Yeah, of course. He played 87 minutes. He got replaced by Foden, and he won the joint most tackles with 5, which is a bit of a surprise, really. Moving into midfield, then Bernardo Silva next up. He completed the most passes with 68, but I thought it was a quiet Bernardo performance, to be honest. He also got booked for his challenge on Dan Burn, I believe it was. It might have been a one before that, actually. But even so, Bernardo got booked. He's not far from a 2-match ban, actually, so he needs to be careful with that. But I'll give him a 6.5. I don't think he was great, to be honest. What about yourself, Dan?
Yeah, I'll agree. I'll give him a 6.5. Look, Bernardo he's not going to be the outstanding player on the pitch. He's never going to be, your man of the match. I think some of his tackles that he put in were quite funny, quite Bernardo-like, if you will. But yeah, he's going to have to wind his neck in soon and stop getting these yellows, because the last thing he wants is him. And it's a real possibility that he can miss this Arsenal game, which is going to be so crucial. So you're going to really need him in this running, but you're also probably going to need him on the pitch. You can't have him having a ban for a game like that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we're going to really have to watch that.
Yeah. Next up then, of course, the man who got both goals on Saturday night, Nico O'Reilly. He actually had the least touches of any outfielder to play the full 90 with 29, but you can't complain. 2 goals. I'm going to give him an 8.5. What about yourself, Dan?
Yeah, he's probably the man of the match. For me, I'd probably give him a 9 out of 10. Obviously, he's coming into a newish position in the team, and then scoring 2 goals in a game like that. Where if we didn't get those 2 goals, where were they coming from? To drag the team through, a game like that in these circumstances is a big thing for a 19-year-old kid to do. So yeah, he'd probably be my man of the match, and a few others.
Yeah, definitely. And another player who's been getting a lot of plaudits in the last couple of days, Erling Haaland, of course, got an assist. Didn't end up getting on the score sheet, and actually won the most duels in the match with 12. What was your thoughts on his performance, Dan?
Yeah, I think to start, I'd give him a 7.5 out of 10. I think this performance really shows what Haaland brings when he's not scoring.
Yeah.
He is capable of dragging 2-3 centre backs away from the limelight. He can take those players out of the game just by being there, and that's why he is so dangerous. If he doesn't score, he is probably the reason that other players scored. And he did that well. He physically fought with a few of their players well, and that's sort of what you want to see from a player of his size. You won't hear many people saying it, but yeah, that was a pretty good performance from Haaland, even though he didn't score.
Yeah, I'll agree with you there. I'll give him a 7.5 as well. His strike partner on the night was Omar Marmoush, who, of course, assisted the first goal. But apart from that, didn't really do much. I'm going to give him a 7 out of 10. What about yourself, Dan?
Yeah, I'd agree. I'd go 7. Look, I think with Marmoush, a worrying bit of form. This a really worrying bit of form for me, because I think you're expecting a lot more. This isn't. You can't look at him like an academy graduate anymore, or a new signing. We're talking about a £70 million striker, and I think this last run of form, he's on 300 grand a week. I think he's just not the Marmoush that we saw last season. He looks very far from it. And yes, he's getting the odd goal or assist, but this isn't sort of what it was. Will he get it back, or has he been told that he's going in the summer? We don't know. I'm sure we'll find out, but really hoping that he can pick some form up in the next few weeks.
Yeah, definitely. He got subbed off after 58 minutes as well, which doesn't exactly bode well for his performance. Moving to the 3 subs then, starting with Abdul Kadir Kushinov. He played 45 minutes and was the most accurate passer to play at least 45 minutes with 92%. He nullified Newcastle's pace, not press, which he was brought on to do. I'm going to give him a 7 out of 10. What about yourself, Dan?
Yeah, I'd agree. I'd go 7. Yeah, I think he came on, he did his job. They didn't score whilst he was on the pitch. Fairly bog standard height for Kusanov. He's massively underrated and he's a massive player for us now.
Definitely.
So yeah, he's probably our most important defender at the minute. And it sounds weird saying it, with the amount of players that we've got, they were looked at as better than him. But I think what he brings in terms of pace at the back and the way that we like to play with a high line, and Donnarumma not exactly being a sweeper keeper, is Kusanov is absolutely huge for us. in our system, and I think Pep will now know that after bringing him on at half time.
Yeah, definitely. And I saw a tweet, I think it was from Stephen McInerney, who does know what he's talking about in terms of City. He said a couple of months ago you would have never seen Kuchinov coming on at half time, which shows how much he's impressed Pep in the last couple of months. Would you agree with that, Dan?
Yeah, to be fair, I think I really like the signing of him from the start of last January. Seeing the clips of him in France, he looks like the player that you really want. He comes in, he fights for the badge. He's not scared of a physical altercation either. So I've liked him for a while, but look, his development, over the last few months, he came in, he had a rocky start in that debut against Chelsea. He had that mad 5 minutes, did quite well after it. But yeah, I think he's been brilliant since. He was brought back into the squad for a bit around, just before Christmas, and that hasn't given Pep a reason to drop him since. He's been absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, definitely. And then Ryan Shirky came on and played half an hour. He also completed the most dribbles with 4. He replaced Omar Marmoush, and to be honest, he probably did similar to Marmoush without getting the goal contribution. I'll probably give him a 7 as well. What about yourself, Dan?
Yeah, I'll give him a 6.5. I think. It wasn't his best performance. But you can't expect him to be putting Messi levels. You can't expect him to come on and do everything every game. He's still young. He's still, he's still improving. He's still building. Still getting used to the Premier League, etc. If we're going to use that excuse for Wirtz over at Liverpool, then we can use that excuse for Cherky. Look. Nothing to worry about, but it wasn't his best performance. He didn't exactly do anything wrong either, so it's not too bad.
Yeah, and our final substitution was Phil Foden, who touched the ball 3 times, so I'm going to give him a 6.
Yeah, it has to be default to a 6 again. Foden, this is really weird, I think, at the minute.
Yeah.
Why a few months ago he was undroppable, one of the form players of the league, and now he's effectively been frozen out the squad again in a way.
Yeah.
And it is interesting. I think I might be the only City fan here worried about what's going to happen in 2027. Next year with his contract situation. I believe he will get one, but is that on the fact that he's a Manchester lad and been here for so long, or because his performances have been really questionable? Over the last, he had that bit of form before Christmas, but apart from that, he had a shocking year last year, and that he was terrible last year. You can use he was burnt out from that, but this year you really expected more from him, especially with that form. He's really got to stand up here and show it, and struggling to get minutes in games like this, struggling against the teams like Salford. It's not a good look for him at the minute, and it is a really really interesting thing to be watching over the next couple of weeks, especially with the World Cup coming up. Does he go to the World Cup? Does he stay? Is it best for us as a club if he stays and focuses, rebuilds, clear head and start again next season? So it's a very fascinating situation with Foden at the minute.
Yeah, and of course, the last major tournament he went to with England, he went in the form of his life, probably PFA Player of the Year, basically carried City to 4 in a row, and he's probably not been the same player since. We saw glimpses of it at the start of this season, like you mentioned, before Christmas, but since Christmas, he's not the same player at all. Next up, then, we will look at the match stats before a few quotes from Pep Guardiola, Mark Guehi, Eddie Howe, Anthony Gordon, and even Gary Neville had 50 pence put in. So the match stats then, starting with a possession, 55% to Newcastle's 45%. City had an XG of 1.35 to Newcastle's 0.62. 15 shots to 13 in favour of City, with 7 shots on target each. City had 5 big chances, Newcastle had none. City missed 4 big chances. 84% passing accuracy with 393 for City compared to 81% for Newcastle with 305. City committed 12 fouls to Newcastle's 13, 1 offside to Newcastle's 5 for City, and 5 corners each. These stats show that City dominated the game in terms of quality chances and overall control, as we held 55% possession, created significantly higher XG, and generated 5 big chances as we missed 4, while Newcastle created none, and we edged the shot count as well, despite both teams having 7 shots on target, though Newcastle stayed competitive with a similar amount of corners, slightly fewer accurate passes, and more offsides, and a marginally higher foul count. What's your thoughts on them stats, Dan?
Yeah, I think they're surprisingly close. To be fair, I think it shows that we didn't exactly dominate the game, and the reasons there that they almost got a result from the game. So yeah, I think as I said, it's a very different Newcastle team and Newcastle performance to the one in the cup. It might have caught us off guard slightly, but we fought through. Big saves from Donnarumma, big performances from Kusanov, Guehi at the back, and they really kept us in it. But those stats really show that we weren't exactly dominant in that game at all.
Yeah, definitely. Next up, then we will look at the quotes of the people previously mentioned: Pep Guardiola, Mark Guehi, Eddie Howe, Anthony Gordon, and Gary Neville. So Pep Guardiola emphasised that the intensity level of the performance against Newcastle must be maintained for the rest of the season. He praised the team's unbelievable effort and the electric atmosphere created by the best crowd of the year. He expressed his pride in the fans, highlighted the need for that home vibe in the remaining 5 league games at the Etihad, revealed plans to give the players 3 days off to relax before preparing for Leeds away, confirmed Ruben Dias's halftime sub was tactical. He stressed playing for the fans, given their challenges in attending matches, named Erling Haaland as his man of the match for his tireless fighting and defensive work against man marking, despite limited service. He expressed slight sadness for Haaland's lack of scoring chances, but lauded his generosity and unforgettable performance. Praised Gianluigi Donnarumma as a special keeper in a line of top City keepers, and noted Haaland's reluctant but helpful defending on long balls while celebrating his incredible assist for Nico O'Reilly's second goal. What's your thoughts on what Pep Guardiola's had to say there, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, Pep's thoughts are always very interesting. I think I like how he's brought the fans up again in a positive way, in the fact that he's acknowledged the struggles that people have now got. I think the atmosphere will be a big thing, as he said. It's obviously just he's putting a bit of pressure on the club, I suppose, and the higher ups there, to listen to the fans finally. About the prices and stuff like that. And I think, this weekend, as experienced, Piccadilly was shut, etc. And the game being moved to a Saturday night, it was a really tough game for people that are living away from the ground to get to if you try to use public transport, etc. So, a big shout out to everyone who turned up to the game and struggled through it in the weather. I know a few who were in town and made a bit of a day and night of it. So that's another big thing. But the atmosphere I've heard was amazing. I think Pep acknowledging that is massive. I think him mentioning Haaland as well and his defensive work rate. I think this season has gone under the radar. I think I remember, was it Arsenal away as well at the very start of the year. His defensive work was amazing during that game, and probably bringing him off weirdly was probably what lost us the game. yeah, I think Pep, he was very happy after that win. You don't see Pep that happy that often. So, yeah, I think, he enjoyed his night and gave the players a few deserved days off, especially considering that, we've now got a very, very, very busy schedule until basically June now.
Yeah, definitely. And if you look at that Arsenal away game, if he keeps Haaland on, we could hold on for 3 points, and the gap's only 3 points then going into the last 10 games of the season with a game in hand and having to play them at home, but it's if, buts and maybes. And we don't do that here at Manchester City. We get the results on the board and we get the titles in the cabinet. Moving to new January signing then, Mark, where he described the club as a top environment where everyone has been welcoming since his arrival. He's been forced to completely change and adapt his game with more thought process over physicality while learning every day. And he praised Erling Haaland's amazing work ethic and focal point role after the manager gave him his plaudits at the end of the game and highlighted his fight for every ball against Dan Burn. What's your thoughts on what Guehi's had to say there, Dan?
Yeah, I think I've been really, really impressed with how Mark's settled in. I think having a pretty turbulent end at Palace, losing to Macclesfield as your last game,
Yeah.
as that club that you're captain of, it'd be really tough, just to jump straight out of that, jump on a plane one day, start training the next day after landing. You're moving your entire family, halfway down the country. Yeah, I've been really impressed with how he's settled into the system, how he's fit in with the group, and what exactly he's helped us with. But his leadership, once he's settled in, will be massive. I think for the last stage of the Champions League and building into next season. Yeah, that's going to be a massive part, and I think he's going to be a real asset to have hold of in the next couple of seasons.
Definitely. We'll move to Gary Neville then, unfortunately. He observed that the meaningful post-match celebrations from Erling Haaland and Pep Guardiola felt deliberate mind games directed at Arsenal and suggested that every action and word from now until the end of the season adds pressure to the other team, even if Guardiola denies it. What's your thoughts on what Neville's had to say there, Dan?
Well, I mean, Neville, I'm not exactly against what he's saying there, but I think the mind games that we'll be playing would be very different to over celebrating.
Yeah.
I mean, Neville says this because he knows he'll get a few clicks here, but he knows exactly what this scenario is. He's been in that many title races with Arsenal as well, so I think that might be a nod to see how mentally fragile Arsenal may be here.
Yeah.
I mean, the very thought of Semenyo and Nico O'Reilly saying that they were going to be watching the game against Brentford and Wolves last week caused them to drop points. So, we're playing mind games, all right, but we're City in a running against Arsenal. I think we know what we're doing with mind games here.
Definitely. We'll look at the Newcastle point of view then, starting with Anthony Gordon. And he had praise for Pep Guardiola. He said facing Pep Guardiola and Manchester City is the hardest challenge in his career, and noted he has never beaten them in the Premier League and called Guardiola the best manager of all time tactically. That's high words from Anthony Gordon there, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, look, I mean, he's probably not wrong in what he's saying. I mean, you look at the Premier League era, he's been in the Everton team. He came through in 2019, if I'm right, 2020.
Around lockdown, weren't it?
Yeah, and I mean, since 2017-18, City have been like a massive force. Many teams will struggle against. Any point you get against City is probably a memorable part in most teams' season.
Yeah,
I don't think that's silly to say. And I completely agree. I mean, you bias, it's whatever, but I mean, Pep tactically is probably second to none. You look at what he's done. He's changed English football, and no other manager has changed English football. You look at, I mean, I mean, Ferguson came in at United, and I'm not exactly going to say he revolutionised tactics. He just had a better team after a few years. Whereas Pep has really changed, and you've seen the way that teams are now trying to play Pep's football. Even, if you go down to non-league, teams are trying to do it, but, it doesn't exactly work well when you've got molehills in the penalty areas. But, he's not wrong in what he says. And I think City are a massive challenge and will be until Pep leaves.
Definitely. And finally, Eddie Howe expressed pride in Newcastle's performance as they went toe-to-toe with Manchester City and showed outstanding energy and recovery after their long Champions League trip to Azerbaijan. Newcastle, I think they should be proud of their performance at the weekend. Would you agree with that, Dan?
Absolutely, and especially considering that that they had to factor in a 5,000-mile trip to Azerbaijan. There's a lot of time spent up in a plane, which isn't comfortable. It isn't great for recovery. Isn't great for build-up of the team. Especially when you're up against a team like City who have had a rest, which there you'd be really thinking they would be up for it, which we were. And I think that game would have been really interesting if we were away in Europe as well. To see how we adapted to it. But I think Newcastle should really take a lot of positives from that and be moving forward, and they should probably really look at that cup game that we have against them in a few weeks with a bit more hope than they probably were this time last week.
Definitely. That is it for this video then, where we reviewed a big 2-1 win at the weekend. Of course, it's Leeds away on Saturday evening, so we've got a couple of days rest, a week rest to be exact. It's only 2 games over the last 14 days, which is ideal, of course. In the next couple of days, we'll be looking at, is Elliot Anderson the right fit for Manchester City? Could his Forest teammate Morgan Gibbs-White also join the club? And on Friday, we're going to do the top 10 players of the Sheikh Mansour era. That should be a good one. Keep your eyes peeled for that one before Leeds preview should be out Saturday morning. Everybody, thank you all so much for watching, and we will see you in the next one. Take care and come on City. Cheers, guys.